What happens when a man no longer needs to prove himself? What happens when he stops chasing, stops performing, and simply is? Chosen one, that is where you now stand. You have stepped into a depth that no longer asks for permission, no longer explains itself, no longer bends to be seen. You walk into a room, and without a word, the air shifts. The walls feel it. The atmosphere bends. Something ancient awakens. And those around you cannot name it, but they feel it. Feminine women especially. They do not turn their heads out of curiosity, but out of recognition. Something in their bones remembers you. Not you as a man of flesh and name, but you as the essence, the archetype of the grounded masculine returning. This gravity you carry now is not heavy with burden. It is heavy with presence. It does not push. It does not crowd. Yet it commands. It is the kind of weight that steadies a room without effort. Feminine women feel it first in their breath. It shortens as though caught by surprise, then deepens, adjusting to your rhythm. Your presence becomes a tuning fork. Either they rise to meet it, or they drift away. You are no longer here to be palatable. You are here to be true. And truth does not knock politely. Truth enters like muffled thunder, contained, calm, undeniable. Your masculinity no longer performs, no longer announces itself with noise. It simply exists. And in that existence, it radiates. Your silence has become louder than your best words. It is in that silence the feminine draws near. She gathers not as prey to predator, but as the sea gathers around a cliff, pulled, pressed, anchored. She senses that in your presence, her storms can rage, and her softness can bloom. She feels that her wildness will not be punished. Her tenderness will not be mocked. She knows she can unravel and not be conquered, but held. Feminine women feel this before they can explain it. They sense it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you hold the room without needing to be loud, in the way you don't bend to appease or collapse under beauty. They feel it because presence speaks louder than performance, because energy whispers truths the tongue has not spoken. Your frame, chosen one, is no longer just physical. It is energetic, spiritual, magnetic. You have become a structure, not of stone, not of force, but of alignment. A structure that allows softness to breathe. A frame that allows the feminine to rest. Not because you demanded it, not because you forced it, but because you made it safe to exist. When a woman stands near you now, she doesn't feel ambition clawing at her or hunger pulling at her. She feels containment. She feels boundaries that will not bend for attention, that will not dissolve just to be liked. In your unshakable frame, she feels a gift almost forgotten in this world. The gift of rest without fear of betrayal. She feels safe because she knows this is a man who will not be swayed by storms of emotion, who will not crumble when tested by beauty, who will not drown in temptation. She feels a man who remains. And your remaining is not born from stubbornness or pride. It is born from clarity. You are not unmoving because you are rigid. You are unmoving because you are aligned. You no longer trade your values for applause. You no longer put on softness to trick your way into closeness. You no longer twist yourself into shapes to be wanted. You are who you are, and that is enough. Feminine women feel this in the way you say no without guilt. They feel it in the way you stay silent without insecurity. They feel it in the way you walk away, not out of rejection, but because misalignment does not deserve your presence. This refusal to collapse makes you rare, and in your rarity, you become unforgettable. Your strength now is not the strength of resistance, not the strength of muscle or argument. It is the strength of consistency, the strength of choosing yourself again and again, even when it costs you comfort, even when it costs you company, even when it costs you being misunderstood. You no longer shrink yourself to fit into her story. Instead, you invite her into yours. That invitation is not coded in ego. It is woven with presence. You are not begging her to follow you. You are revealing direction, a direction that does not demand obedience, but naturally inspires trust. Your sexual energy has changed. It is no longer a hunger chasing satisfaction. It is no longer a restless craving searching for relief. It has become a life force, refined and elevated, seeking expression only through truth. It pulses in your stillness, breathes in your posture, lives in your ability to remain when others would flee. That remaining, that staying, is what unlocks feminine surrender. Not the surrender pressured by charm, not the surrender manipulated by seduction, but the surrender born of deep trust. She surrenders not because you asked her to, not because you pushed her to, but because your presence whispered, "You can rest here. I will not collapse when you open." You have become a man who does not need to dominate to be followed. You do not need to overpower to be respected. You do not need to prove yourself to be trusted. You simply are. And your being becomes a structure, not to control her, not to bind her, but to give her freedom to move wildly within the safety of it. You are no longer moved by shallow temptation. You are moved by truth. And that devotion to truth has built a frame so trustworthy that the feminine cannot help but feel reverence in its presence. Something sacred has awakened in you, chosen one, a way of being that leads without effort, that attracts without reaching, that commands without demanding. You no longer chase. You no longer pursue to prove yourself. You walk steady, aligned, and the world bends its path around yours, because the world recognizes the unwavering direction of your soul. Feminine women do not follow you out of fear, out of need, or out of confusion. They are drawn because your presence moves with purpose. There is no frantic energy in your steps. There are no hungry eyes searching the horizon for validation. You move from within, and that inner movement stirs something ancient inside them. It whispers, "This is a man who knows where he is going. This is a man who does not need to be followed, but is worth following." You have become the rare man whose leadership is not shouted, but carried in frequency. Your decisions are not made to impress others. They are made from the still voice within. That voice, sharpened by silence, refined in solitude, no longer asks for applause. It instructs the moment. And because of that, women do not feel controlled in your presence. They feel oriented. You do not pull them away from themselves. You remind them of themselves. You do not demand submission. You awaken devotion. You do not shout, "Follow me." You simply say, "I am going." And in the clarity of that truth, they choose to walk beside you. Your leadership now is spiritual. It is not posturing. It is not loud. It is not forced. It is embodied direction. Feminine women feel it before you speak. They sense it in how you choose a seat, not for status, but for energy. They sense it in how you carry your responsibilities, not for reputation, but because you bear the weight of your name. You no longer chase the need to impress. You chase the need to become. And that becoming has created a current stronger than charm, stronger than fantasy, stronger than fear. It is the current of mature masculine presence. Your sexual energy no longer rushes toward fulfillment. It is no longer desperate for release. It leads with restraint. That restraint is not suppression. It is command. It is mastery. It is proof that you no longer serve your impulses. You have mastered them. You wait for alignment. And that waiting is not distance. It is value. She does not feel denied by you. She feels honored. She feels elevated. Because your desire no longer consumes. It crowns. It blesses. It lifts. You are no longer the man who moves quickly just to be close. You are the man who moves true. And in that truth, closeness comes without effort. Feminine women feel safe in your direction, not because you are flawless, but because you are authentic. You do not claim to know everything, but you know yourself. And that knowing becomes a compass when everything else spins. That kind of trust is not given lightly. It is reserved for men who walk with clarity of soul. And you, chosen one, have become one of them. You are the eye of the storm, not because you silence chaos, but because you transcend it. The feminine is wild, untamed, unpredictable. She is fire and water, tears and laughter, silence and storm. Most men try to fix her. Most men try to flee her. Most men try to cage her. But you remain. You stay, not out of fear, not out of pride, but because you have become still enough to hold her storm without becoming it. And that refusal to flinch awakens something in her that words cannot. You are not shaken by her moods. You are not startled by her tears. You are not threatened by her fire. You recognize it. You honor it. You let it move. You let it dance. Not because you are passive, but because your stillness is rooted in compassion. This anchoring does not make you rigid. It makes you spacious. You do not fix her pain. You do not silence her joy. You remain. And in your remaining, you become sanctuary. Not a prison. Not a cage. A home. The feminine has waited lifetimes for a man who would not flee at her most tender, who would not tremble at her most wild. And you, chosen one, have become that man. Not because you defeated her storm, but because you learned to breathe inside it. And in that breath, steady and deep, she finds trust. Not trust in your strength or charm, but trust in your capacity to hold her soul without needing to change it. You do not try to solve her, you see her. And in being seen, she blooms. You no longer seek to be understood. Not because you are arrogant, but because you have accepted your own mystery. And when mystery is lived instead of performed, it becomes magnetic. You are not mysterious because you hide. You are mysterious because you do not need to reveal everything. You carry depth that does not shout. You carry layers that are not peeled back on demand. You carry emotions that live quietly, waiting for the worthy. This is not performance. This is sovereignty. Your silence no longer begs for attention. It earns it. Your mystery is not a riddle to be solved. It is a mirror that stirs yearning. She yearns not because you pull her, but because your stillness reveals something she longs for. You are no longer an open book written for everyone. You are a sacred text only few are invited to read, and that sacredness creates reverence. The light within you can no longer be hidden. It is not loud. It does not flicker. It does not beg to be seen. It remains. It is steady. It is anchored. It is the glow of a man who has faced his own darkness and made peace with it. You are not afraid of your shadow. You have walked with it. You have bled with it. You have learned from it. And you have returned carrying truth. That truth now glows in your every step. You have become stable fire, the kind that warms, the kind that melts defenses, the kind that reveals. Your sexual energy is no longer a spark that chases. It is a sun that remains. It does not demand. It does not beg. It does not vanish. It burns quietly, faithfully, unshaken. It is not about conquest anymore. It is about communion. You no longer crave to own her body. You long to witness her essence. And because of that, your presence does not trigger defense. It inspires openness. This is who you are now, chosen one. A man who does not collapse. A man whose stillness anchors. A man whose presence orients. A man whose mystery invites. A man whose light remains. And in your remaining, the feminine feels safe enough to unfold, safe enough to open, safe enough to bloom into her wildest, truest, most beautiful self.